for recording. Thank you for doing that for us and getting it converted. We appreciate it. And we'll start with introductions with the hubs. And let's start in Eastern Oregon today. So how about Frontier to start?
Donna and Patty are here.
Welcome. And then what about Eastern Oregon?
Kelly Poe's here. I'll turn my camera on in a couple of minutes.
Welcome. Blue Mountain.
Aaron's here.
Welcome. Four Rivers. I know she's there. Multnomah.
Francis is here.
Welcome. And
Is here.
welcome.
Molly's here too.
Yep, welcome. Clackamas.
Hi, this is Adam. Chelsea and I are here.
Welcome. Northwest.
Hi, Dorothy's here.
Welcome. Washington.
Begonia's here.
Welcome.
Evan's here.
Welcome. Marion Polk.
Lisa's here.
Welcome. Yamhill.
Jen's here.
Welcome. Lynn Benton Lincoln.
Christy's here.
Welcome. Lane.
Bess is here.
Welcome. South Coast. Not sure they're here. They have a governance meeting. South Central.
Jillian's here and Michael's here.
Welcome. Southern.
Hi, Renee's here.
Welcome. And Central.
Hey, this is Brenda.
Welcome. And then let's see for staff. We have Andy.
Hi, Andy's here. Sorry, I'm
Welcome.
finishing up my lunch.
That's okay. Dana, are you on?
Yeah, good afternoon. Dana's here.
Welcome. Gwen. I know she's there. John.
Good afternoon. What's this thing called lunch? I haven't heard of that before.
It's an amazing new invention. I just discovered it. It's something you do where you shove food quickly in your mouth when you have back-to-back meetings for 8 hours.
It's like snacking, but you do it like slightly more purposefully, John.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna work on it.
Everyone, that should be our new fall resolution for September, eating lunch. Kimberly. Noah.
Here, present.
Welcome. Joan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you.
Welcome. Cass.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Margie.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. My wonderful work partner, Carmen.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. And Sue Miller.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Anybody that we missed that's on the meeting with us today?
Hey, it's Ann. I'm here.
Oh, there's Ann.
Yeah,
There, I missed somebody. Me on the camera.
Hi, Denise. Four Rivers here. I know you called me and I wasn't here, but I'm back.
Thank you. Welcome, Krista. All right. So we have a busy agenda today, as you all know. So we'll just start with just a couple operational updatey things here. And of course, the neighbor's going to start like mowing their lawn. Okay, so I wanted to let you know we're moving forward with the $1.3 million cut in school readiness. We're working right now with DAS and doing the procurement piece because obviously we have to have an amendment to the contract to do that. And one of the things that I've been doing is just double checking everyone's current claims in EGMs to make sure that our expenditures will match up because that 1.3 million will, remove about 34% of that fund. And so I want to make sure that everybody's not expended more than 50%, which is a concern considering we're in September now. So if this feels like, I cannot see that there's a problem on anyone's part, but if you feel like there is an issue, please let me know offline as soon as possible. Let's have a conversation about how we're going to deal with that. But otherwise, it looks like everybody's good. So more to come on that. You know, it's hard to predict what the timeline is with the procurement for getting that cut. But I would ask that you maintain less than 50% of spending that until you can see. And if you still need assistance in trying to figure out how much is that off of our dollars, please also let me know offline. I have that number for you as well. So any questions there? Okay, super. And then, oh, go ahead, Bess.
Just curious if, so just school readiness will take the hit?
Just school readiness, because we feel like that's the one you can backfill with KPI dollars, and
Right.
also is the one that appears to be the most underspent because of the transition activities that haven't been able to happen with COVID. So it had to go somewhere, and it would be a lot more that would have to come out if we had done the stable attached families. So.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks for that work on that behalf. I mean, I know it had to come from somewhere, and I appreciate you preserving coordination and family support. So we can go with confidence in terms of creating our budgets for 2021 with hub coordination.
Yes, where that's,
Cool.
yes, where that's at. Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And then I have to check my own agenda here to see. Okay, good. We talked about the spending, the timeline. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to mention real quick that we've been talking about internally is knowing that you all have your own directors meeting, we'd like to start to make sure that we have agenda items from you for these calls. And so if there are things that you would like to bring forward, I talked a little bit with Kelly Poe about this week, because I know that her and Jen are the current facilitators of your meetings. But we decided we don't want to come up with anything without the conversation with the rest of the directors. So just in the future, I like to have the agenda out by the Friday prior to the meeting. So if we could just assign someone on your side, whoever the current facilitator is, that you guys would grab some items that you want to talk about with the division, and we can get those added to the agenda as well. So that's just something we want to make sure that we're hitting on. So even beyond the open forum, we actually have time to prepare if there's specific questions that are coming down the pike on that.
Okay, we will do that. Thanks, Denise.
Perfect, thank you. And then, okay, so with that, I think, Joan, I'm going to hand it over to you to do an update on the CCRs in Eastern Oregon.
And actually, I'm going to ask John and Margie to take the lead, and I think Margie's going to start, and then I'm the wing person. I wing in if there's anything else, but they've got it covered. So
thank you. Great.
Thanks, Joan. We try. Let's put it that way. So hi, everyone. Wanted to give you an update on the action happening in the CCR&Rs. After legislative authority and some allocated funds, we are able to align the CCR&R regions with the early learning hub regions in Eastern Oregon. So we've already talked to all parties impacted, and this is the process that we will be doing. A lot of this really does come from legislative authority, but also we've been wanting to right-size the Eastern Oregon region for quite some time. As you know, that CCR&R covers 8 counties, and that brings in 3 early learning hubs. So with the expansion of preschool promise, legislative authority, and the desire to really start resourcing and building supply, we are now going to create 2 new CCR&Rs. The current Eastern Oregon CCR&R will move to just covering Umatilla, Morrow, and Union counties, so that will align with Blue Mountain Hub. Then we will have a new CCR&R for a new Eastern Oregon CCR&R aligning with Eastern Oregon Hub, so that's Malheur, Wallowa, and Baker. And then we're going to have what I am referring to as CCR&R Light for Grant and Harney, so that will align with the Frontier Hub. And how that is a little bit different than the new Eastern CCR&R is that there are only 24 providers in those 2 counties. So we really do need to have a reasonable balance on allocation, and what we will be doing is hiring a QIS, Quality Improvement Specialist, lead position. And this lead position will primarily be responsible for building supply of childcare, as well as supervising preschool promise staff, quality improvement specialist staff, and instructional coach, as well as an infant toddler QIS. So, and then the current Early Learning Hub director for Frontier will be supervising that lead QIS, with the goal of eventually having a standalone CCR&R with a full-time director. The Eastern Oregon CCR&R director will be a colleague of Kelly, the Eastern Oregon Hub director. However, that team will be helping to recruit and hire. We will be contracting with the two ESDs, who are now the backbone agencies for Frontier and Eastern Oregon Hub. So we'll be moving forward with contracts with them. And then we're also building a very strong orientation and training for the new CCR&Rs. We'll be utilizing the strengths of the current Eastern R&R, as well as setting up some other mentors with other CCR&Rs, kind of aligning the strengths and what's needed. So we're in the process of doing that. We'll have support from the Research Institute at Western Oregon University, who have been helping in training, providing training and TA for our current CCR&Rs, as well as the new one at Douglas, Klamath, and Lake when that one started. So the other thing too is we are looking at expanding services as far as CCR&R in Yamhill County. So again, that's another step towards alignment, but again, it will be a satellite. It won't necessarily be a new CCR&R. So it'll be a satellite with the current Marion Polk Yamhill CCR&R. So we'll be getting more resources and more staff in that region. We also know that Multnomah County has a huge number of providers, and we need to get more resources in Multnomah. So we will have a satellite there as well. So we'll be building that, and that will be connected to the current CCR&R in Multnomah County. So John or Joan, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I will just add in briefly, just related to, you mentioned there was some capacity in the Eastern region related to the addition of infant toddler specialist positions to help those regions have a level of intensity around recruiting providers and retaining providers that serve infants and toddlers, and something that we've been trying to build in our system for some time. And we have a little bit of additional funds going out to some regions to ensure that we have enough FTE of infant toddler specialists in a few other places. So I just wanted to mention Washington County will get another position related to that. Multnomah, associated with some of that satellite office expansion there, would have another infant toddler specialist. There's a small 0.25 going to the Northwest Regional to make round that out as a full FTE of infant toddler specialist. And then Marion Polk and Yamhill with their expansion of the satellite activities in Yamhill would also have an additional infant toddler specialist.
Thanks, John.
I think the only other thing that I would add is that the other thing that this expansion allows us to do is to provide more robust support for the implementation of Preschool Promise, because we'll be able to have coaching and quality improvement staff located closer to providers, and we think better serve participants in Preschool Promise. So we're very happy at the opportunity that we're able to offer the CCR&Rs to more robustly support childcare, especially during this pandemic, when we know that childcare is extremely stressed, and that building the capacity of these organizations is essential in supporting a robust childcare workforce, both the people that are able to be open now and hopefully those that will open in the future. So we see this as a real success. I hope you all do too, that we're able to really demonstrate and invest in leadership for the childcare workforce.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you, John. Lisa, you have a question.
Just a quick question. So I just want to clarify these additional resources, which is super exciting. This is in addition to the resources to support Preschool Promise that is going to the R&R, or are they kind of mixed in with this?
Additional.
Additional?
It's additional, yes.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, comments? Well, I want to thank Kelly and Donna for their support in this and their enthusiasm as well in helping to really not only support the current Eastern CCR&R in this transition, but also to really hold the space to build these new CCR&Rs.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to transition over now to Kimberly Moa, who's going to give us a presentation on the equity grant funds. And then we're going to talk about K-transition with those prep questions that I sent out and also put in the chat box today. So take it away, Kimberly.
Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay. Great. Okay, because I can't see you guys, so good to know. So just want to say thank you all again. I believe I came to one of your meetings in the meeting in April, because I came on board at the Early Learning Division at the end of March, and so I believe it was April when I came in and did a quick little a little meet and greet, and then I quickly went away and worked on the equity fund. And so today, just kind of, recapping the equity fund and kind of where we're at, just so that everyone's aware. And also those questions that were sent out. Those were sent out because I had met with Joan and Denise and kind of we're trying to find all the data and collect the data of what are providers and programs, what is everyone doing nowadays with COVID affecting everything. And so just wanted to get some more insight. And so we wanted to hear more from you all. And so just a quick little synopsis, a quick little brief, a reminder, kind of like the purpose of the equity fund, just a reminder that there was really three main reasons why the equity fund was kind of developed. The first thing is, expanding the access to culture-specific early learning programs statewide. There was no direct access for state funding for a lot of the cultural organizations. And so they wanted to find a way in which they could funnel in to be able to grab resources. And so this would be a perfect opportunity for that. Also, just to bring them into our early learning systems, you need to be more equitable and inclusive and diverse. When we get more feedback, more insights, more perspectives, more voices at the table, we're able to be more inclusive of our early learning services that we're providing statewide. And so it was a great opportunity for the culturally specific organizations to come on board. And finally, to aim to close opportunity gap, to close in it, to be able to help, the disenfranchised communities. And so those were kind of the three key reasons why the equity fund came about. Quick overview. These are the eligible criteria, the criteria in which would make them eligible for the equity fund. I will say that this part was really we really looked into this in the review process, especially the review committee. They really made sure, leadership was reflective. They really made sure they looked at the zip code geographically, who submitted, how many submitted from which county, wanted to make sure we were able to really spread the love throughout our state. And so you'll see, I'll show a map kind of where all the submissions were, where we're currently at. And so everyone can understand what we're working with when it comes to the Early Childhood Equity Fund. And for the ones that can't remember or don't know, there's two types of grants that are available. Program grants, those are designed to deliver culturally specific organization or programs in parent education, parent-child interaction, kindergarten transitions, and tribal language preservation and revitalization. That one is embedded within the other three programs. And then there's planning grants. Planning grants are a one-time grant that could then phase and change into a program grant the following year. And this is to help culture-specific organization develop their early learning program so that they can provide those resources the year after. And so, and one key thing that put in bold there is that an organization can submit for more than one application. That's why you will see in the map here in a little bit. In one of the slides, there's organizations that might have a number next to them, which means they receive that many grants. The reason why, it's because really it was the platform in which we use for submissions. They really just allowed us to do one application per program, and so that's the reason why organizations could submit for more than one application. And so the grant submissions that we received a total of 62 grant applications. As you can see, it's somewhat spread from north to south, but not really east side of Oregon. This is what we received when it was the deadline. And so when we break it apart, these are the 49 program grants in which we received by county. And so I will say that the review committee really stressed looking at the counties in which there were a smaller number, because we want to make sure that these resources are spread out. They weren't given first priority or anything if they were the only one from Josephine or Douglas County. It's just we wanted to make sure that we eliminated all barriers. I had stressed in other meetings before that we can tell the organizations that were able to afford a grant writer and who was not able to afford a grant writer. And so those were things that we all considered, the difference of programs that had other fundings and programs that were private and smaller. And they were the director, the teacher, the aide, the secretary, the fiscal manager. I mean, you can tell the difference. And so we wanted to be as inclusive as we could be. And then these were the planning grant submissions. There was 13 planning grant submissions that we received. And so that's what we received. And so this is kind of the current status for the equity fund right now. On June 5th, we had the award decisions were announced. They were sent out. They were posted on our website. And then there was a protest period for them to kind of protest and say, hey, we don't understand why we did not meet the criteria, or why we weren't funded, why weren't we on Tier 1 or Tier 2. And so what happened was in August, the Early Learning Council met, and so they were able to approve and make changes to any of the appeals and moved forward. And so currently now we're working on the grant agreements, and shortly, because we have actually received full funding for the equity fund, which is $10 million, our Tier 2 grantees are being granted as well. And so connecting with them, getting things kind of ready with the grant agreements, and those will be sent out shortly, very soon. And so just kind of waiting on that. Let me know if there's any questions. I cannot see if there's any questions. All I see is my PowerPoint presentation. So please just chime in and let me know if you have any questions. And then this list is our official list of the 26 grantees that will be funded by the Equity Fund. There's a total of, like I said, 62 applications that were submitted. 33 were approved, and of the 33, 26 of them were 26 grantees are holding them. So if you look, if you see ERCO, you see Black Parent Initiative, Lower Columbia Hispanic, Cairo, they have numbers next to them because that's how many grants that they received from the Equity Fund. And so, for example, the for ERCO, obviously they have a parent-child program, they have a kindergarten transition program, they have a parent education program. And so you can kind of see that they had applied for more than just one, which was which they were able to do. And this is our 26 grantees to kickstart our first ever equity fund for our state of Oregon. And so when we look at this, we kind of want to look at the breakdown kind of geographically, where are they, right? We wanted to make sure that we really included anyone that we could. I will say the definitions set in the rules for what a culturally specific early learning program was what we kept going back to, because there were a lot of organizations that were not culturally specific organizations, but said that they were providing a culturally specific early learning program. And so with that being said, they had to meet all the other criteria to be considered one. And so that was the either the point in which they made it onto the list or not. And looking at the locations of the grantees, this is where they're located. This is planning grants and program grants together, okay? So just a quick little map for you all to take a look at. And then we are, this is the first year that Equity Fund is being implemented. And so, with it being the first year, there's growing pains with it as well, right? There's good success, there's growing pains, and we know moving forward what changes that we'll need to make. And so we've jotted a lot of that down, but we try to make this as culturally appropriate as we could, understanding our own cultural humility. We try to make the applications accessible in any way they could. They could submit in any languages that they could, trying to eliminate as much barriers as we can. But as we are all aware, there's always other barriers that we are unaware of. And so moving forward, we're going to make some changes. And then for the tribal nations, these are the locations of the tribal nations in which they will be receiving Early Childhood Equity Fund.
Hey, Kimberly.
And,
This is Bess from Lane. I just had a quick question. Yeah. I appreciate your explanation around, really the thrust of the grants was really around awarding culturally specific organizations, not just programs, but I'm curious about the conversation that went around awarding school districts, since they technically don't fit that category. Just curious sort of how the decision came to be around awarding school districts.
Yes, a lot of people ask that question, especially with the school district, because one, obviously the school district is not a culturally specific organization. And so that's where we had to go into the eligibility requirement in the sense of, do they meet the early learning, I must have taken that slide out. But there's a slide that indicates the definitions of what an early learning program is. And it is an early learning program if they are a certain demographic, a certain demographic, a certain zip code, or certain, and then the leadership had to be reflective, and it had to be the people that were making the decisions had to be reflective of the community. And so when looking at that, we actually sent out additional questions to all the grantees. We asked them to send us their leadership makeup, the demographics behind their leadership. And so the grantees sent all of that. And so we went into the school districts and looked at the additional information they sent us. And that was demographics to the leadership that was in charge of the early learning program. And so, for example, like South Lane School District, the person and the leadership team that's in charge of the early learning program were all reflective of the children that were being served, that they said they would be serving in the application. And so the review committee was very, they stressed it, and they wanted to make sure that they fit all the criterias and what an early learning program was. And so, and they fit. And so that's the reason why school districts were able to make it.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Kimberly,
and so, and here,
it's Denise.
Yes.
Sorry. There's a question about the map, which in regards to Washington County, does the map mean that that's where the service will be provided, which is how I read the map.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's where the service will be provided. And we actually had to send another question, another more information, additional information out, because what we found was that there were some organizations that were providing services for more than just one county. And so what, like a growing pain of what I was saying is that, you know, in our application, we only stated where they were located, but we had forgotten to ask the question, where would these services be located in which counties? And so when we got that back, it was a complete change in the sense of, holy cow, you know, ERCO is serving, you know, not just Multnomah, they're serving this and that and that. And so a lot of the organization were serving more than just one county. And so we were able to get a better picture of the grantees. And so this is the most updated map of where the services will be given.
Hey, Kimberly, this is Kristen. I would just add to that one that the OCDC grant, we're all 5 counties of our hub are included in that grant as well. So I'll touch bases with you another time about that. But thank you for noting that.
Yeah. I mean, that was one thing that we found out. We found out from talking with a couple of grantees that they said, no, we serve more than just, you know, just Clackamas. We're serving Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington. We're like, okay, well, that's a question, a very important question that's missing in our application. And so we sent another email out asking for additional information, because we wanted to make sure that we had as much information as we could, because it was this funding is very specific as to who they want funded. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking away any opportunities from any grantee, possible grantees, or children that would, or in families that would be receiving the fundings. And now in this slide, you can see the funding and the program types. 43% when you look at the program types would be going to parent-child interactions. 4% would be tribal language preservation and revitalization that would be embedded within the other 3 programs. 30% are kindergarten transitions, 23% are parenting education. And then when you look at the demographic side, here's the thing. This is what the applications stated they would be serving, okay? And so, for example, we have very specific demographics that we received, as in, we are serving just a Micronesian community. We are serving just the Guatemalan community. We are serving just Latinx community. And so this is the demographics in which the grantees said they would be serving. We would hope that they would stick to that. For example, pretend there was a grantee that said we will be serving 35 children, and all 35 children would be from the Latinx community. Can I say they will serve 35, or will they serve 30 and serve 5 that are not? I don't know. But this is the ECE demographics. This is what they stated in their application that they would be serving. And so this is kind of the makeup in which we have right now. And then hopefully once we get our reports from them, once the program starts, once grant agreements goes through, and once services are starting to be utilized, we could get the information and see if it's reflective of what they had informed us they would be doing. And so in total, the Early Childhood Equity Fund, the goal was to serve 1,500 children. And from the numbers in which we had, the numbers that we received from the applications and the grantees that we have awarded, we will be serving over 4,000 children statewide. So we are completely excited for this. Like I said, it's the first year this is being implemented. There's lots of lessons learned. There's things that would be changed definitely next time. But then if you guys have any other questions, definitely do not hesitate in reaching out to Adina and I. Adina is the grant manager that's in charge of the equity fund. So anything fiscal related, grant related would go towards her. And then anything program related is me. And people just see both of us in the same email, and then one of us will reply back. And so definitely do not hesitate to connect with us, okay? And then I'm looking at the time here. Sorry, I spent more time. Like I said, please put in the chat or email me. But the 2 questions that were sent out in the email, as I talked with the Early Learning Systems Director, we were talking about the effects of COVID. And a lot of the equity fund grantees had reported back saying, you know, we're going to make changes to our delivery. You know, we said we would be doing home visits, but with COVID, we will be doing them virtually. Is that okay? And then when it came to kindergarten transitions, we have not heard much from the grantees and any changes in which they would be doing. And so that was when I was informed to connect with Joan and you all, because you all, you know, you work with the folks, you know the folks, you know, this is the information that you wouldn't know that I wouldn't know because I'm so far away from it. And so, and this is good information. As Denise and I, we were talking, we're like, this is good information for us to know and to have down. So in the future, if there's any other providers or partners or programs that are needing help when it comes to COVID that might say, hey, Kimberly, I have no idea how to change, you know, how I want to do kindergarten transition anymore. Like COVID has affected anything. Do you have any ideas? And I can say, oh, you know, what's working well is in this county, they're doing this, you know, in this hub, there's a couple of providers and partners and programs that are doing this. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to kind of chat and put down, you know, what you are hearing, what you know is going on in your community and in your hub regions, and kind of like what is needed. And, you know, we are hearing, I mean, I hear the needs and the wants of the programs, of the providers, of the partners, of what they need in order to be successful during this situation in which we're living in, this pandemic. And so I wanted just to hear from you all, if you guys could give us some of the information that you are hearing so that I can take this information back to my team and to Miriam, and so we can move forward with the information. And so if you all would not mind just kind of having a quick conversation on that, that would be great.
Kimberly, this is Bess from Lane again. I can just give you a quick update on what we're doing in Lane. So over the last several years, our primary investment of KPI dollars and school readiness dollars has been in the Kids in Transition to School program, or KITS. And this year we worked with the developers of KITS to modify their usual 12-week in-person kinder transition or school readiness groups that also have a parent component and a staff training component to go virtual, focusing mostly on parent education around getting their kiddo ready for kindergarten. So they called it Kits at Home, and they presented that in both English to parents, to about 200 English-speaking parents, and then they did a Kits on Casa to two groups, I think roughly 20 to 30 Spanish-speaking parents, 8 weeks, 2 1-hour Zoom meetings each week, so 16 sessions, and they just finished last week. So it was a way to deliver the content that way to parents. And then we just had a couple rural school districts that have very low cases that were able to do small in-person groups with a stable group of kids. But that was one way that we modified the kindergarten transition programming that we usually put forward each summer to, you know, to be delivered virtually. And then I think to just quickly to answer your second question, the thing that is coming up for us in terms of programs, providers, families right now is childcare. And so we are working fervently to try to help connect families with childcare, both pre-K childcare and school-age childcare, and really just it is a spider web of knotty issues, especially as we try to support the kids furthest from opportunity and those with special needs. My backbone agency is a United Way, and we actually are working with some pretty major donors that have donated a lot of money so that we could actually stand up a childcare fund. And we're doing that now and working with local providers like Boys and Girls Club and YMCA and other places to put some sites in churches. It's like trying to recreate school. Honestly, it's kind of just a crazy endeavor that we're doing, but that is what we're hearing loud and clear. And I think just to put out to the group of an outstanding question that we have is how do we expedite childcare licensing to some of these pop-up childcare sites so that families can apply for ERDC before the deadline for the income requirements that have gone up over COVID ends September 30, because they need a childcare site to list on that form. So there's a lot of things going on, but I didn't want to leave this meeting until at least I put that question out to the group. So thanks for asking.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Anyone else?
This is Lisa, and what we've been doing is we've been modifying our kindergarten partnership and innovation work in a somewhat similar fashion to be focusing on a kindergarten transition through parent and family engagement. And so what that looks like, we've got a variety of different activities and planning that is happening. We have pivoted to do Ready for Kindergarten, which is from the Reading Foundation. It's a 3-week seminar, if you will, for parents, and then they actually receive tools, which are toys, to help support their child with kinder readiness activities. So we have been doing that, and that has been wildly popular, both in English and in Spanish. So we've been doing a fair amount of those. In fact, I think over the last 2 months, about 100 people have gone through in both English and Spanish. We're also, some of the plans are to making activity kits for families. We're also very concerned for childcare providers, particularly as they are helping kids as they transition back into school virtually and online. And so there's probably going to be a fair amount of distraction happening. So just wanted to make sure that childcare providers have what they need. And then all of our other parent education activities are also being done virtually, in addition to Ready for Kindergarten. So those are a couple of ways. In terms of, what is needed by providers, obviously the obvious, which I know you at the division are working on in terms of materials, sanitizing, and all the equipment that goes with the health and safety standards. That is definitely there. Also having access to just consumables and materials for kids to use as they're putting things together, so that they're not sharing all of this stuff. So those are some of the hot button items, and I think there are a couple other things that I may remember here in just a moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Who else would like to jump in? We can extend a couple more minutes.
Hey, this is Krista, and we're doing very similar things, online parenting education in collaboration with behavioral health entities, and also our Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups are transitioning into online. And we're beginning to have...
Can you put their phones on mute? We're getting a lot of feedback from somebody's phone.
Who's MS?
Folks can be on mute. That would be great. Thank you.
Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, and I'm just starting to talk with Growing Great Kids. I don't know, Healthy Families Oregon has been using that curriculum and trying to figure out a hybrid for using that curriculum as a way to stay in touch with families through a mobile route where we drop off kits on a 2-week cycle for families to do stuff. And then I really want to say thank you to Lisa for that link about Ready for Kindergarten, because I think that's a Growing Great Kids is 0 to 3, and we can use something with that. And then kindergarten, I think that's a great opportunity. The other thing I think is really important for us at this time is really trying to take the temperature of what families actually need. So we're working with community partners to make sure that we're surveying and gathering qualitative data about families' experiences specifically around childcare, and also what they're needing right now. Just because I think that we have like a lot, like the web that you were talking about, and the complexity is there. And I think part of unpacking that is having accurate local data that helps you know where people are. So that's a big thing that we're working on as well, which is really that family engagement thing.
All right.
I can share from Washington County's perspective, just so, I think there's a lot of similar things happening. But the one thing people should be aware of is that we were able to successfully work with our county commission, and they allocated about $11 million of CARE funding into the child care sector. Two different ways of doing that. One is 5.5 million is going through direct grants to child care providers. And then the other 5.5 million, which just was decided last week, and I'm furiously working on right now, and Begonia and the team has been supporting, is providing grants to school districts so then they can create subsidy pools for in-person distance learning support. So developing sites with child care partners in like Title I schools, bringing in families and supporting them through the end of December with CARES funding. Trying to work through all the logistics of it right now, but all our districts are engaged and willing to do that, and just trying to identify where to house those supports in the various school districts.
And we have also been partnering with the Clean Water Services from Washington County to distribute more than 100,000 PPE, like equipment and sanitizer and wipes. And one of our community partners, OCDC, has agreed to be the hubs for the child care providers in Washington County.
Thank you.
That's great. Great.
Anybody else want to hop in before we will have to wrap up no later than 1:55, which is before we get to coordinated enrollment. But anyone else want to jump in?
Denise, this is Christy. Similar conversations around childcare issues and moving the parenting education and other family supports to online platforms. One of the things that we're hearing from our community partners that we're implementing a lot of our programming is that parents are expressing a lot of concern about socialization for the children and getting them ready for kindergarten. And they're starting to think about what they can do come January when hopefully the schools have opened back up, and doing some partnerships to do kind of almost like the summer jumpstart programs, but trying to move smaller cohorts of kids through some of those types of programs so that they're getting the opportunity for some socialization that they haven't been able to have while they've been at home through COVID. So it's something they're watching, and some of them have asked, can we wait to spend down our funds for kinder transition so that we can try to provide some of these opportunities if we're able to in January, or at least reevaluate in January. And that's what they're hearing from parents and what they're hearing from the schools as well, that that's a big concern.
Thanks, Christy. Anyone else?
I'll jump in real quick, Denise. This is Renee from Southern Oregon. In addition to a lot of what's already been shared, we also in the spring surveyed our K-12 partners to find out who the correct contacts were for kindergarten transition information and what they wanted to receive. And then we worked with a lot of our early learning programs to create one-pagers for each child going into kindergarten, really highlighting their strengths, but also some of the other nuances for each child, whether they had the IFSP, if there were any other information-related topics that would be really pertinent for that incoming kinder, for that teacher to know about, hoping that will be able to grow that region-wide. Not every provider obviously is on board yet, but our biggest concern and need that we're hearing is that families are overwhelmed and they've been disconnecting. They're over it. They're feeling so frustrated with this online expectation. And so our hub partners were putting together what we're calling a parent engagement toolkit, with the idea that it's not really specific to kindergarten transition. It's for any family serving organization to really start to look at the protective factors and how they can really promote those within every family that they have contact with on an ongoing basis. So it isn't an activity, it's really establishing that relationship with families. And it's still in draft form. We're still vetting it with different partners from different priority population groups. But once we have something that we think is worth a look, we'll share it out with everybody to use as you see fit in your regions. But we just know that this family engagement piece is just so critical. And I feel like we just need more. We just need more of that, more support for our families.
Thanks, Renee. So one more minute if anybody wants one last one. I see there's some in the chat box as well, Kimberly. And so,
thank you.
So we'll send those over to you in the notes. And if people have written notes, that's great too. But one more before we end. Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kimberly. It was great to have you on the call with us today. Join us
Yeah.
anytime. We're happy to have you here with us. And with that, I'm going to make Ann the presenter, and we're going to move over to coordinated enrollment.
All right. Can everyone see my screen okay? I'm going to be flying blind like Kimberly was. As things come up in the chat box, please, one of my ELD colleagues, please feel free to interject because I won't be able to monitor as well.
I gotcha.
So, hello everyone, once again. I wanted to try to do some updates. We have a lot of information to share and resources coming out soon, so I wanted to fall back on some familiar, if imperfect, visual aids to try to settle ourselves into. So our arrows are back at us, and our road marker sign, we are past appeals and before agreements are fully executed. And wanted to make sure you all were aware that agreements were sent yesterday afternoon, I believe, is when they went out, and that if it has not already, we will be sending a copy of the provider communication, which includes sample grant language and the grant manual links to you all to be able to see what providers are receiving and how coordinated enrollment shows up in their understandings, and try to encourage some common language and understanding as you start to get to know these providers or strengthen your relationships with these providers. I'm going to also just include, this is a pretty version of the chart that I've been sending out about resources related to coordinated enrollment, so that you have an idea of what's on the radar, when to expect certain things, and that I can communicate any updates with you about those ETAs. So we had enrollment forms and the outreach toolkit with templates go out last week, yesterday, which August 31st already seems like so far away long ago. I updated the toolkit with information about interpretation and translation resources available to you all. Today, newly, I will send an updated 2020-2021 Preschool Promise Program Year memo with a couple of updates related to conversion children to replace the memo that was sent last month. And then the Preschool Promise Enrollment Manual will be finalized and will be sent out today as well. I've got a date to have signups for selection training to you all by the end of this week. Trying to do on the earlier end of this week, but certainly by Friday. And then still in the works of getting together to be able to send ETAs for you about how exactly that process will look to receive information about executed agreements, the additional eligibility determined practice scenarios that Don has put together some, and then launch of the coordinated enrollment Q&A. That's been kind of going with trying to get our provider FAQ and make sure that we've got clarity around where questions need to go and need to be answered. So that an ETA on that will be coming soon. In talking about expansion, I wanted to gather some of the common questions I was hearing, and thank you all for your patience as I'm responding. I know every time I send resources, it raises more questions, and I very much appreciate getting them, and really also your patience in me trying to compile and then respond to them in as effective manner as I can. So again, to continue to reiterate, the fully executed agreement will be the green light on enrollment work. Very common question, how will hubs know if an agreement is fully executed? We are working on an ELD internal process so that the teams between grants, programs, CCR&Rs, hubs, all those who face our different partners are able to see the status of agreement execution in one place. What I do know is that the plan right now is that they will be executed at ELD in batches, and so as batches come through, I'm hoping all my ELD colleagues will know when is a batch time or a batch day, and then we'll be able to communicate out to you all as those are executed. Good question coming up. The communication that went to providers says the children cannot be enrolled prior to an executed agreement. Are hubs allowed to start enrollment, like collecting documents from conversion families? At this time, the hub cannot begin collecting documents or determining eligibility without a provider's executed agreement. That's essentially just to ensure, like, you know, should something happen and a provider not accept as many spaces, or something happen that would cause the agreement to not be executed, that we haven't sort of set up an expectation with families about that. So that's sort of our justification around that. I was hoping to have a little bit of time to hear from you all. A question or a comment I got about the provider communication that went out last week was that some of the wording, while intended to encourage the providers to hold off on enrollments on their own, certainly to establish the hub as a place to go with enrollment, some of the communication to providers might be interpreted as providers should start sending families to hubs before an executed agreement. That was not our intention, but I think knowing how things may come out on the ground, I wanted to take a little bit of time with you all and hear, has this been the case? I know the communication just went out. And then to think a little bit ahead, if there's ways that you might suggest or might plan to respond if a family is reaching out about a conversion or enrollment during this time where we don't have executed agreements yet. And I would love to use a little bit of brainstorming time with you all, or to hear about how you're thinking about things. So I will stop talking to allow that to occur and see if anything has come through the chat in the meantime.
And this is Lisa, and what we have done is we've created a landing page on our website where families are interested in learning more as a place where they can give us their contact information. Also, as our providers in this area, many of them are doing the same thing, that they're just sending them families our way. And so what we've been doing essentially is collecting names and emails and just saying we'll get back to them as soon as we are able to do so. So that's how we've been handling it. So good, bad, right, or wrong, that's what we've been doing.
Thank you, Lisa.
This is Renee in Southern Oregon, same with us, and just checking back with all of those families that have indicated that they want more information, letting them know we haven't forgotten about you, more to come soon, because there is a lot of anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
This is Jillian, and in South Central, we're doing the same thing, and have had questions from providers and parents that will it be executed agreements from one provider and then you can move forward, or do you have to wait for all? And so anyway, that's one question we have. And then another question we've had from providers is if they have a contract for 15 children and because of COVID, they don't have 15 children, what happens then? So those are some of the questions we've been having from providers. And with parents, we've been sending out emails periodically, letting them know updates so that it saves them the frustration of waiting. So we've been sending out communications regularly.
Thanks, Jillian.
This is Begonia with Washington County. So we actually had a meeting with CCNR and tier number 1, just to get to know each other and to answer a few questions, not many, to be honest with you. And so last night we had a meeting with our Parent Advisory Council. So we review all the forms and the toolkit provided by the ELD. And we also were talking about the messaging and the portal that we want to see on our website.
Thanks, Begonia. Anything else coming through in the chat or anyone else want to share?
No, and just a comment about updating the hub profiles on the website with the coordinated enrollment contacts, because there's information that directs the providers to that site. So it's not just the director's email. So we will work to get that done and just ask if people can send Ann and I that information. We can update the website with that.
This is Dorothy. So kind of similar to other folks in terms of if families contact us, it's taking names down, and we'll follow up with the screening form once that is kind of in its, once we're able to make that step. We, in the meantime, have been meeting with our potential preschool promise providers. I keep saying potential until there's executed contracts. But we've been regularly communicating with our tier 1, and then once tier 2 was announced, tier 2 folks for quite a while. I mean, I'm pretty much on the phone with some of them almost weekly, it feels like. Just being able to say, hey, I don't know anything new. We have check-ins with all of them this week, knowing that contracts were going to be coming. I have check-ins with all of them this week. The other thing that I did last week when you released it was actually part of the draft grant manual that I think you've previously shared. There was a MOU template. So I took that along with another template that we had, and I drafted up an MOU to begin to circulate with our tier 1 and tier 2 providers to get their feedback on, so that we could have an MOU in place shortly after they execute their contract with the ELD. At least that's the way that I'm explaining kind of the steps with them, that they have to execute their contract with the ELD and then execute. Then we have to have an MOU together so that we can move forward on particularly the returning and converting children first. So that's kind of happening. And then just the other thing I wanted to add is as we started to get into our internal workflow of how this was going to work, we also reached out to our administrators in our ECSE program to understand how the IFSP and placement conversations need to overlay in the enrollment process. So for example, if we have a family that says that they're on an IFSP, they are placed in a program. If their IFSP does not indicate that a community preschool is the best fit, well, we wouldn't know that necessarily. So we're just trying to make sure that we have built into our workflow the right steps as it relates to any child that is on an IFSP when they get placed into a program.
Thanks, Dorothy.
And this is Michael Asher. I was wondering if you had any additional information about how you imagine the lottery system working that you could update us with?
That's going to be the focus of our selection training. So that is coming soon. And I think at this point, it's, I guess, a little bit to say that while we have expectations and our selection criteria around the lottery. I think the how it happens is going to be pretty dependent on being in conversation with, how your system, what systems or what tools are you using that might support that. But that our goal is that we have a couple methods by which we're ensuring that a lottery occurs. So more to come when we have selection training. I'm sorry, I don't have more specifics at this point.
And Anne, you said you were going to start we're going to start signing people up for that probably Friday. For when might the training be taking place?
I'm looking at the training taking place sometime either late next week or early the following week. So more information to come very soon, I think I should say.
Do we know now something about the COVID waivers, and do we know anything if providers have the freedom to choose between in-person, online, or hybrid?
Yes, so you are reading my mind, Begonia. I think what I will do is move to the next set of slides, and that's part of what I'd like to discuss in our discussion for that slide. So thank you.
Anne, can I ask you before you move on to the next topic? This is Kelly. So what I hear you saying, I thought I understood you saying that you're going to have the training later this week, but you're saying you're not going to have the training, you're going to have the sign up for the training. So are you saying that there's no way that a Preschool Promise program is going to be serving children as early as September 10th? Is that impossible?
I think if you are concerned that that might happen, it's a little difficult to know without the, execution exactly. But if there's concern that you have a brand new program that does not have conversion children, that let's talk about that. Because I want to.
Actually, that's not my concern. My concern is the programs who were Preschool Promise contractors last year. And they are, all of their annual insurance payments are due right now. And that's thousands of dollars to get the kind of coverage that's required by the ELD. And so those Preschool Promise programs assumed, they thought that they would have a contract in place by September and be able to make those insurance payments, but they can't get their first quarterly payment until they have an executed agreement. They're in a really tight spot. So my concern is those programs who have several children that are in their second year this year, they are ready to go, really close to ready to go. They only have a few slots to be filled by coordinated enrollment, and they have their classroom because they had their classroom last year. They're ready, and I'm just it doesn't sound to me like they're going to be able to start serving children even before the 10th. And I think that the 10th was, sort of the postponed date that they had thought that they might do. So you're saying that they probably have to postpone even farther.
Well,
this is a problem. It's a financial problem.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that. I'm just speaking from the coordinated enrollment side of this, which, is obviously part of the effect, but I think many of these issues are things I'd need to take back up to my program team colleagues, unless there's something they'd like to respond to right now. But I do, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I want to make sure that from our coordinated enrollment side that we're able to support how we can. So if there are those where that is emerging and is becoming an issue or a concern there, let's talk about them so I can help support.
Yep. It is an issue and it is a concern, and we'd like to talk about it with whoever. And I don't want coordinated enrollment to keep them from starting their program either. So I'm trying to get out of their way and get as much done as I can so they can get their executed contract. So I just don't know how to do that. And then they need to receive their first quarterly payment.
Mm-hmm.
Anne, do you mind if I just jump in real quick? This is Andy from the program unit. And I would just encourage you, I totally appreciate, Brenda, that whole situation. But what I would encourage them to do is to reach out directly to, now that they have their grant and their grant manual, to Dana Young, the program manager, and talk through some of that, because it sounds like they have returning children. And if they're able to open before they're able to draw down funds, then we can talk through that. But now that they have their grant agreement waiting for them, we can talk through that with them and timeline it out with them.
Awesome.
This is Gwen. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't know my camera was still off. I tried to grab a little lunch earlier, but I apologize. And I know that you might not be able to be monitoring chat while you're also sharing screen. So I'm trying to get to the questions in the chat box as well. So just wanted to let you know that that's being monitored. I wasn't sure if you were aware. They keep coming in, so I'll try to answer as many as I can for everyone.
They are, yeah, and most of them are specifically, I think, preschool promise type questions, Gwen. So if you want to,
Right.
I don't know, do you want to answer them in the chat, or do we want to take a minute?
If you could capture them, Denise, that'd be great, because I don't think I'll be able to respond as quick, you know what I mean, to them all. And but it might be good to capture these in like our FAQ and another way of communicating this back out to everyone.
That we can absolutely do. So I think what we'll do is, do we want to keep moving forward with coordinated enrollment, and then at the end we might have a couple minutes to go back and answer some of these, and or the rest we'll do in writing.
That sounds great. I think I have one more slide with some discussion, so we may be able to shave some time here. I think the other set of questions where I feel like we were already leading. So many of the preschool promise slots are in new programs, no conversion children. How can I proceed? So those, you know, for non-conversion or returning children, they'd sort of have to go through the screening form process. And so what we are able to share now is that hubs are able to share with the caveats that Dorothy so expertly highlighted, the potential preschool promise providers that would, you know, allow them to sort of consider and then rank up to the 3 that they are interested in, and that, you know, may also, hubs may also customize the preschool screening form and support targeted recruitment for those vacancies. And then similarly about the screening form, do hubs have to use the template, the form that was sent? Can there be an online version? As the manual, both draft and the final that I'll send this afternoon, give guidance on, yes, please do customize the screening form. We were trying to create a resource in a PDF template, if that's useful for you, but you're not limited to using that template. And there's information in the manual about required questions and then some areas to consider and guidance around customizing or adding additional questions to the preschool screening form. And happy to talk further about that. Screening forms can be completed electronically or put in an online version. It's the hub's responsibility to make sure that they're meeting FERPA requirements on parental consent. There's consent language in the template version that we sent to you all of the screening form. And would just make sure that any online versions parents are also giving consent, and that you're able to document that that consent has been given.
Hey, Anne.
Yes.
Can you have a calendar invite reminder that's overlaid on the slide? Thank you.
Thank you for that. So you
can I jump in and ask a question too before you get to the discussion?
Absolutely.
I'm curious about what form we are going to be asking, if any, returning preschool promise families to fill out, because I didn't see that information in the manual or really understand if the application was relevant to them.
Yeah, returning families have already kind of completed their application and their eligibility determination. So we don't require them to do that again. We are asking hubs to collect that prior enrollment information or the enrollment file from the providers, if that's where it was, and obviously would need to document that those children are filling a vacancy or filling a preschool promise slot, but don't need to do the application again.
And do you recommend that we contact those families to get any updated contact information, or they're good to go from the provider standpoint? Just wondering if, other than collecting their records from last year, is there anything else that we need to do with returning families?
I don't believe that there's anything hubs need to do with returning families.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. So back to Begonia's question, I did want to discuss about this. So, you know, the ability to share potential preschool promise providers and to start, you know, collecting in a more kind of formalized way, or managing an applicant pool from families submitting their interest through the preschool screening form. We do have some unknowns still. So providers will, along with their grant agreements, got information about submitting a waiver for service delivery models based on COVID-19. And so that that waiver information will be submitted back to ELD, you know, with the grant agreement signature potentially following that, as providers are determining what's going to be best for their service delivery. And also the in the case where you may have conversion or continuing children, not knowing exactly how many remaining vacancies there may be with a given provider, just wanted to kind of open the floor a bit to, you know, hear about some ideas or brainstorm around, you know, how we make sure that we are still moving towards a direction of, you know, coordinating enrollment where we can, of really trying to center families' choices, center their experiences, and you know, around expectations of availability of slots or service delivery, and then unknown right now. And just, you know, hear what you all are thinking about. I know that based on questions I'm getting, there's a lot of really great thought being put into this right now, and would love an opportunity to share with everyone.
Hi, Anne, this is Dorothy again. So my team met earlier this week just to talk a little bit about the screening form and how we would want to modify it, or what, oh, maybe that was yesterday. I don't know what day of the week it is. Earlier the week was yesterday. One of the things that we had talked about was modifying the list of potential preschool providers to have an icon that in the feature section that would be like a distance learning icon. I'm not sure exactly the timing on it, because like you said, like some of this is dependent on the service delivery model waivers, but we also on the screening form are adding a question essentially asking families that if a program were in a distance learning model of any sort, whether that's full distance learning or hybrid, if that would be, I forget the wording, but essentially if they would still be interested in enrolling in that program if they were selected for enrollment. And we had been talking quite a bit about like really making sure that we understand what each provider is offering at the start of the year, knowing that that could change potentially partway through the year, and that families are able to really to help us understand if they're interested in a program, but that program's just in a distance learning model, if that is something they would be able to still engage with. And that we've already talked about how that then translates to if that family is called up in the lottery, having a conversation with them, you know, in the eligibility interview application process of it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Dorothy.
So our parents yesterday provided the same recommendation to add it in both the feature column as well as on the screening form. But the question that they had was if the waiver is going to be approved for the same period of time, or it goes case by case, because then we will have to be reviewing the feature column as well as the screening form, updating the information. So will the waiver form will be good until the end of the year, or is only good for 3 months?
Yeah, that's a good, I'm documenting that question. I'll see that. Oh, sorry. I thought someone was about to comment in there. Okay. Oh.
It was me. I was going to make a comment to a question in the chat, but I'm like, no, I can do it later. So it was my indecisiveness. I apologize.
No worries, Gwen. No worries. Thank you. All right. Anything else coming up as folks are thinking about the outreach and really just trying to center families in this experience?
And this is Krista. On that first bullet, I just was thinking this through because I have lots of new preschool promise slots, but the ones I'm working with are predominantly in childcare settings. So they're not necessarily conversion children, but they may be eligible in terms of the continuity of service. So they would be prioritized because they already are going to, even though it's a brand new program, we're still emphasizing existing care, right?
So if the children were enrolled with a provider and Preschool Promise, slots come in to that, then if they were enrolled with the provider, they would be prioritized as conversion to go into the Preschool Promise program. Is that?
Yeah, that makes sense. But they're converting because they're eligible and they were already a part of the child care program.
That's right.
And now they're part of Preschool Promise.
Yes.
Okay.
We need more words for program, the things that we mean by program. Thank you for clarifying that.
Hey, Anne, this is Bess, and I don't want to get into like individual program weeds here too much, but we do have a situation where we've got a couple of providers that are located at colleges or universities. So their population of parents are students who come and go. And so potentially we have a new provider that says like, they have to double qualify, right, for their Preschool Promise slots because they both have to be a student and they have to be eligible for Preschool Promise. And so I'm just curious about if it's a new student, their child wouldn't necessarily be a conversion child, but they would kind of be a conversion child only because that student is going to that university for which that childcare serves, and they only take students. So we wouldn't necessarily place community kids in those slots because they're reserved through their guidelines, bylaws, whatever, to place only students' children. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's kind of a gnarly thing to try to, yeah.
Yeah. Gwen or Dana, I'm not sure if you can weigh in on there. If the provider is able to limit Preschool Promise enrollment to college, university, to attendance of the parent at a specific place. Because I think then best we can figure out how that might work.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit focused on answering a question. So let me just make sure. So the question is whether an additional condition could be placed on enrollment. And I would say we don't have that ability. It's not, we are this year focused on, I should say, our strategy. And, we know we have a lot of learning to do in that it'll probably adapt the next year. We're using a lottery to get through this year, but there is enrollment in a university or is not a prerequisite for eligibility for Preschool Promise. So Bess, does that answer the question? I mean, that's.
Well, sort of.
No, I'm curious. Like
yeah,
I said, it kind of came
because what will happen is that if we've got students who are at Lane Community College, they will not place their children in that Lane Community College will not allow them to use their child care, which is a Preschool Promise program, to care for their children. So if we say, hey, you've got 20 slots, Lane Child and Family Center, and we're going to fill those all with community kids because we can, that program needs to know that, because I have a feeling that would be a determining factor on whether or not they would execute that grant agreement, because they're trying to serve the students that go to Lane Community College, which is, I think, a priority population and partly why they were awarded slots in the first place.
So I think probably we'll have to address that individually with you, Beth.
Okay, because I've got Lane and I've got UVO as well. So
that's what I figured, that you had two there. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for raising that.
This is Lisa, and we also have a university setting, so we could, if you could include us as well, that'd be great.
And I'm just doing a time check here. We're at 2:28. And I did want to just get Kelly's question was, where do I find the MOU language for coordinated enrollment?
Yes, that is in the grant agreement. So the draft was already circulated, and no changes to the MOU, but you will get the final manual this afternoon.
Okay.
You can find it Appendix A, I think, very first one. Or
Good.
no, B.
We will also, I think that a lot of the questions in the chat box, Gwen and Andy have gotten to, but any that we have not, I'll go ahead and pull those together with Cass, where we pull the recording together and make sure that those are answered, and we'll send those out to you as well. I'm just looking to see if there's any last. Yep. Okay. So, woo, juicy meeting, 2:29, and we will be back in touch shortly, as Ann said, with getting the next set of trainings set up, and more to come on coordinated enrollment. So happy September, everyone. Keep resting. You're going to need a lot of energy going into the next couple months. So great to see all of you, and we'll look forward to see you again in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.